Hi, this is Tina Ketchie Stearns, and I could not be more excited to introduce you to my dear, dear, dear friend, Sharena Conner. So welcome, Sharena.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You look gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you. So glad to see you.
Yeah. So I asked Sharena to do this week's video blog with me because of all the attention to racism and George Floyd's murder, and everybody wanting to know, what can we do to help? What can we do to help? How can we shift this? How can we change it? I told you guys last week, it's my hope and prayer that in my lifetime, which who knows how long that'll be, but another 30 years, I'll be in my 90s. So hopefully in my lifetime, we're going to see Martin Luther King's dream become a reality. And that's been such a pipe dream for hundreds of years, many years. But once he was on our planet and doing all the wonderful work that he did, there's just been a lot of missteps and false starts, and it just kind of never happened. So we're still struggling with it in 2020. So I want to start with an experience Sharena and I had 10 years ago. She and I went together as coworkers at hospice to an anti-racism, or I'll let her tell you more about it, but it was a 2-day, was it 2 or 3 days?
It was 3 days. It was 3 days. 3 days.
So I'm going to let Sharena share with you some of the experiences we shared together, and it was so special because, I mean, we were hospice coworkers, but the fact that she's Black, I'm white, and just some of the eye-opening, life-changing experiences we had sharing that conference together, I think changed both of our lives. So Sharena, share with everybody some of the highlights.
Yeah, that it was the Institute for Dismantling Racism, and it was a focus in healthcare, which is why we were there, because we work for hospice. However, I distinctly remember, though, that first day or two, remember they explained to us that they were going to do more educating about racism as a whole in the institutions and in the communities and what have you, and then tie it all into the healthcare disparities and inequalities within the healthcare setting. So, I remember the first day I actually called my manager and said, I really don't want to be here. It was tough because the very first day, I don't know if you remember that, Tina, but it was heavy. It was heavy. It really put a lot of things in our face right off the bat. Things that I hadn't maybe dealt with or thought about in a long, long time. And then for you, it was, I'm sure, things that you hadn't even heard of before. So it was, and then for two people, because at that time we were still new to each other. So it was like, yeah, this is not where I want to be right now, just because it was the uncomfortableness of it. But it forced us to be able to work through all of those things. And that's the whole point about, equality and treating people with kindness and dismantling all of these racial, the hate and things like that, is so that we can respect one another for who we are, not from the color of our skin, not by our hair, not by, our culture. It's just being respectful of each other.
Tell them about when they separated us and when we came back together.
Oh, yes. Okay. So that was another one of the challenging times. They separated us and asked us in our groups, they asked us a question about what it is that we do or think about on a daily basis. That was
when we say separate, the whites went to one room and the people of color went to another.
And the blacks went to another room. And when we got, so the part that really, really got to everybody is when we got back together. That was, separating and telling everybody what we do and what we think about on a daily basis. That was easy. When we got back together, that was hard because I remember a lot of people having, including myself, being kind of upset and angry at the fact that you don't have to think about your color at all, ever in your day. I remember when they said, what do you think about? And you tell them what you said you thought about during your day for the whole day. Like,
Right. So when it wasn't just Black people there. There were Hispanics, and I think there were some American Indians there.
Correct.
So it was anybody of color went to one room, the whites went to another. We made these long lists. We came back together, and then it was just list out. Y'all just call out what was on your list. And the white people's list were things like, what are we going to have for dinner, and my kids' homework, and when am I going to exercise, and I got to pay the bills, and just, that kind of thing. Nowhere
Totally.
on this list of 20, 30 things was the color of our skin. Nowhere. Tell them about the people of color.
So on our list, at the very top, everybody, it was unanimous. We think about our race every day because we have to deal with our race when we go to work, when we go to the stores, when we go to our children's schools. We have to teach our kids to learn to be able to deal with their race, because if they are a Black son or daughter going and they're in school or they're out working, we have to start teaching them at a very young age to be able to handle racism, inequalities and things like that, because otherwise it would be very difficult for them to be successful, because sometimes it can be very difficult to deal with all that. So that was like the top 3 or 4 things. It was, dealing with our color and then teaching our children about our color and why, and explaining why our color matters so much in this country.
And Sharena, I remember you actually cried.
I did.
You cried at the fact that we don't have to, it never enters our head. You cried over that.
Right. And that is, and I remember you said, I'm privileged. I was like, yeah, that was, and again, nothing about that whole training or that session was, no one felt offended, but it was very eye-opening, because.
Tell me about the escalator.
Right. When we were on the escalator at the.
No, the analogy of white people. Well, let me just share. So another analogy that they were teaching was that simply because of the color of our skin, white people's skin, it's almost like being on an escalator, and without lifting a finger, you go up. But for a person of color, no matter what they do or don't do or what have you, they are fighting on their escalator to
all the time
go up, but to not go down. It's a struggle simply for one reason only, and it is the color of their skin.
Right. And I'll give you an even better example. So my best friend, Wendy, who is white, she and I applied for a job with the county a while back. And so we both have the same type, we both have a degree, except her degree was in tourist and travel management, that type thing. My degree was specifically focused more on human services and providing care to the community. And she got the job and I didn't. And we talked about that a lot. Like, how is it that we have almost the same exact qualifications, except I had more experience than she did with working with the community and being in healthcare, than she did. But I mean, it's hard when it becomes the norm.
You mentioned Wendy, because that was our little time setter, but we're not going to worry about that. Since you mentioned Wendy, tell them about when you guys went shopping.
Oh, so I was going to get some things I had for my house. I had looked online, found it, called the store, asked if they had it. They assured me they had some. When I went there to buy it, the customer service representative that was helping me said, "Oh, we're out of that." And I said, "Well, I called earlier and I was told that you have it." And she said, "Well, we sold out of that." So I was so upset because I really wanted, when you find that perfect thing. So I went back home and I remember I called Wendy and I was like, "Wendy, I cannot believe that by the time I got to the store, I went right there. I went immediately to the store to get that item because, you know, and she said, really? And I said, really? And so I didn't know she was going to do this, but she told me. So she went to the store and she called me while she was at the store. She said, I got that item for you. And I was like, what? She was like, they have it. So, you know, that and a lot of other incidences, Wendy started asking me, like, if ever I got denied or told no, or I wasn't being serviced, she would always say, you know, it just became a thing with us. She would say, you want me to go and get it for you, or you want me to ask? She shouldn't have to do that, but
Right.
so many times she did that for me because she knew that it was, you know, I was just being discriminated against.
Well, and I want to be respectful of time. So let's move to there's a very global company in our area. Tell the story about that, and then we're going to move on to the hopeful part of this conversation, which is what can we do to affect change?
Yes, well, my sweetheart, his supervisor asked him, which is huge, he's a huge plant manager. So he is really one of the persons on the executive board. And
not your significant other, but the man he was talking to, right?
yes.
And your significant other is Black.
Yes.
Okay.
And the executive member is white, and he asked him, with everything that's going on around George Floyd's unfortunate death, what he was feeling at work and what he could do, and how this was affecting him and maybe some other African American employees. And you know, my sweetheart is very honest, and he appreciates that, you know, and he explained to him that, you know, it's hard to watch this because, you know, racism, it hasn't just started, but it's just starting to be recorded. And now it's just so in everybody's face, it's so present right now, and that it's hard to be somewhere, to work somewhere or be in the community or something and not be addressed, because it just needs to be addressed at this point. You know, they out of 300 or 400 employees, they have maybe 4 or 5 African American managers out of, you know, 100. And so again, it's, you know, we say
it manifests itself in so many ways.
Correct.
And that's another one. So let me ask you, we've talked about this. What can people that look like me do?
The first thing is just not being fearful of someone that's different from you, like the color of somebody's skin. And let me just say, you know, there are many shades of brown and Black, okay, you know, and we just need to look at it like that crayon box. And, you know, we've talked about that before. It is, this world is so much bigger and broader than the color of our skin. Like, that should be the last thing that we are focused on when it comes to, you know, being a good citizen and working in your community and giving back and volunteering. And the other thing is getting involved in cultures that are not of your own. It's okay. There are plenty of events and organizations that you can join that are predominantly Black or white, and totally get to know something different than what you're used to. You remember, I don't know if you remember when we were working together, and I had joined the Indian Association, and I would go to a lot of their events, and I volunteered at the Indian festival, and it was a wonderful experience. I have some good friends even to this day from doing those events. So just getting involved.
Did you also join the Hispanic League?
I did. I still keep in contact with the Hispanic League. They, you know, so things like that. Just being involved in the community. You know, the community is so diverse. It's just, you have to reach out and just, you know that you are doing this to be able to, you know, educate yourself more on what's going on around you with all of your neighbors, like
also,
the NAACP.
Yeah. So last week I was telling them that I actually, for $30, you can join the NAACP, help, get involved in their events, that kind of thing. And the other important thing about this institutional racism, there were laws that promoted racism. I mean, Rosa Parks broke the law when she sat in the front of the bus. So if we can all work toward changing the laws that continue, I mean, it's gotten better. It's gotten better through the years, but there's so many things that still need to change from a legal and political standpoint.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to end with this. I do want to share this story just because a good friend of mine, Chris, who's a police officer, and he's white. And I saw him and I said, "Are you okay? You know, how's it going? You know, trying to figure out where he is on with things, because, he's a good friend. I want him to be safe. And he was like, "I'm fine." Like, hey, everybody loves me. I said, but he is an officer who really gets involved in the community, and it's not about being an authority figure so much as it is educating and talking to people. And but he has a friend whose son comes to him for advice and things like that. And so he asked his son,
Okay, white or black?
White.
Okay.
Asked him if he was racist, and he said no.
How old was the son?
About 15.
Okay.
He said, "No, I'm not racist, and I have friends that are black." And he said, "Okay." He said, "Let me ask you a question. If a white man was walking down your neighborhood, you didn't know him, you never seen him before, would you feel safe?" He was like, "Yeah. He's probably just, going to visit." He said, "Okay, well, if a black man was walking down into your neighborhood with dreadlocks, you hadn't seen him before, would you be afraid? Would that terrify you? Would you immediately want to, call the authority?" He was like, "Oh yeah." And he didn't even catch himself right away until it took him a moment. And then he realized, "Oh, I can't believe I said that. I can't." It was just that natural for him to just immediately say, like, yes, a black man walking down the street with dreadlocks, that was more threatening to him than a white man that he didn't know walking down the street. And so, again,
that's the kind of thing that's going to take, that's the kind of thing that's going to take hard work on everybody's part to understand that man with dreadlocks, have a conversation with him, go have a beer with him. Let's get to know each other's uniqueness so that we can understand that this is such a tiny little piece of, it doesn't even make us different. It's just the crayon box.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody loves lots of colors in a crayon box, right?
Exactly. And I'm fortunate that I have such a diverse group of friends. My family is biracial. I mean, so I've learned a lot, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to get to know people that are not like me, because it helps me grow. And with those experiences,
Well, and Sharena, I do want to respect the time because it's been about 20 minutes, so we need to wrap up. But here's what I want to say to all you that are listening to this. Sharena and I hardly knew each other when we went to that conference, and it bound us together forever and ever. And I've learned so much from her. We do sleepovers. We go to dinner. I told you last week I was embarrassed when, now I can't remember, I think it was the CNN guy, Don Lemon, said, Jimmy Fallon said, "What can we do?" And he said, "Reach out and make a friend of somebody with color." And as soon as I thought, well, okay, my circle of friends, Sharena is my only person of color that I would really let's do dinner, let's do a sleepover, let's go have wine. I know a lot of other people of color, but not that I would call a close friend like that. So I got to fix that. And I've learned so much from Sharena, and I cherish our friendship so much. And I think we learn from each other, right?
All the time.
Like, you learn how ignorant I am of so many things. And I learned why, she wears certain things on her hair, or, all that. So I know this is a little bit longer than what the typical video blog is, but this is such an important time in our lives, and I really hope that you will join with Sharena and I in figuring out what can you do to get involved and make a change and change your unconscious racism, assuming it's there, which it probably is. Sharena, do you have any last words as we close out?
No, I think you hit the nail right on the head. We all, you know, even myself, I have caught myself, but that's the thing. When you recognize it, or when you realize it, or if you have a friend like Tina that says, "Hey, wait a minute," you know, take a moment and adjust yourself, and really try to, you know, it goes back to putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I mean, that is such an old saying, but it's so true, and it's so big. Like, just take a moment and then correct those things and try to be more understanding about that, who that person is, and not being so quick to be judgmental and assume that, you know, this person is not someone that's not like you and I. Look like you and I.
That you should be afraid. Don't assume you should be afraid of the dreadlock man walking up the street.
Right.
Well, everybody, we would love to hear your comments. If this was meaningful, if you got a little nugget of something out of it, please respond and email me at tina@it'saabouthowyoullive.com. If you want to know how to get in touch with Sharena, I'll get her permission to share her contact information with you. And we just really appreciate this special time, and we'll get back to all the hospice related stuff next week. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Sharena. Love you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.